what's something that would be a stretch? This is the toughest part. What's something that would, and this is my question to everybody. If you're trying to get to the whatever it is and you have tried things or other things, if you don't stretch, I'm promising you, you won't get there. Let me ask you a quick question. What's the number one thing you're afraid of? What's the number one thing you're most afraid of the world to find out?
I'll tell you, that was actually the question at Do the Damn Thing World Tour, February of 2020. That was the question sitting there that Tiffany asked from the stage. She said, what's the story you're afraid to tell? What's the thing that has the most risk?
What has the most risk? What's the number one thing that you're most afraid of for the world to find out right now? Or to hear? This is the answer. So I want everyone to hear me. This is not because we want you to grow and to be happier and to be freer. No, it's so that you can actually get to whatever you're after. This is literally the formula. And if you've been a person where you have tried things, you've gone to courses, events, you've bought programs, coaches, and you get some results, it's because you're missing this thing. Like, I will bet on it. I would bet. It's going to be so uncomfortable when you do this, it's going to hurt you. Kind of like equate it to going to the gym, and you haven't been to the gym for a long time, or you go for that hike and your muscles are they're in pain. Like you can barely sit to pee. That kind of pain. I'm not talking about like, oh, I feel a little something on me. No, the time where you're like, well, damn, that was a workout. You know what I mean? Tell me, what's your stretch? I think everybody needs to hear this because yes.
So I left my husband after 31 years. I didn't intend to, but I wasn't happy. And I wasn't fulfilled. And
so we're going to do it right now. We're going to tell the world.
Okay.
Right now, because I'm going to hold your hand and you're going to come on stage with me.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. This is happening. This is happening, ma'am. Give her a round of applause.
So, Easter Sunday, a couple of years ago, I guess it's been now, I had a call with Tiffany. There were a group of us on the call, and everybody seemed to be doing okay, but I was stuck. I couldn't figure out how to move ahead. I couldn't figure out how to be happy. Although happiness wasn't really the concern, it was just being able to move. Every time I would take a step forward, I would feel like I'd get pushed back 5. And I didn't want to be divorced. That was never my goal. I've been with my husband for 31 years, and against all odds, we had survived a lot of things. We had lost a child to a violent murder. He had been sick off and on all the time. I was the only black person in my office, and I would catch hell, and so I would come home, and that would kind of be miserable. And we had 2 beautiful girls that were still alive. One had ADHD and struggled in school, and one had scoliosis and had surgery, and then had a rare staph infection in her back and had to have the rods removed 3 years later. And so we'd struggled through a lot. But after our son had been killed, there was a lot of pain that my husband didn't acknowledge. And he began to go downhill. And I took my girls and we went through grief therapy. We went through lots of therapy. And so we began to survive. We began to pull out, but he didn't. And he stopped helping take care of us financially, emotionally. I even was saying this morning or last night that I realized that things that we had done when we had first gotten married, he began to back up from all of those. So almost everything except for love had disappeared. And when we love each other, we give to each other. We give our best to each other. And I was giving my best all the time, and I wasn't getting any best back. And I was tired of taking care of a grown man. I'm 63. I was 61 then. And so when we were on this call, Tiffany said, "So what's the problem?" And I said, "Oh, just marriage is hard." And so when I first met Tiffany at the World Tour, she found out that marriage was hard for me at that point. And so she said, tell me the 5 things that are the worst. So I said, marriage, finances, living, not having time to get my house clean, or, I forgot what the other 2 things were. And she said, put them in order. And I said, marriage and finances. Because literally every time I would get some money put to the side, my husband would have some emergency, and I'd have to take that money and take care of whatever his emergency was, or he would kind of whine like a baby. And so she said, okay, what are you going to do? Well, I hadn't thought that far. And everybody's quiet on the call. And she says, what are you going to do? I said, well, I guess I should leave. And to back up, I didn't want to leave because the mortgage to our house was in my name, and he had not made a payment in 20 years. And I didn't, even though the house was in both of our names, I didn't want to lose half of the money. And I knew I would have to.
And then she was like, well, I could maybe I need to buy a house. I need to do all those things. And I was like, you just need to find an apartment and pay $1,200 a month and make it a home and call it a day. And she was like, move to an apartment? And I was like, yes, you can move to an apartment and be very happy, extremely happy. Because for her, it was about being in her own space. It was about no longer carrying a weight that she has not wanted to carry for decades. And she was never willing to tell the truth out loud. She woke up every day thinking about the truth, thinking about her own truth. But it's kind of like you almost need, like in that moment, all I could think was, man, if I hadn't have told my own story and acknowledged the truth for myself, then I wouldn't be able to let Carmen know that she already has the power to then make a decision and to acknowledge the truth out loud. Because once you acknowledge the truth out loud, that's it. The truth is what it is. It's uncomfortable and it's inconvenient, and it's always going to be uncomfortable and inconvenient. It's not going to ever be anything else. So the truth was never going to change to anything else. So when she was like, yeah, but we've been married for 30-something years, my exact words were, so? What does that mean?
Nobody ever said so to that before,
What does that mean? What does that mean? Correct.
So then she said, okay, what by when?
When are we getting out?
So I was like, I don't have time to do that right now. And I thought about it, and I thought if I told her September, she would tell me that was too far out.
Correct. It's like January 4th.
So I said, this was April. I said, the 1st of July. And she said, okay, I got my calendar out. I wrote it down. I circled the date, and you let me know. And so then I realized if I was going to leave in July, I had to tell him. And we hadn't had any of those kind of conversations. We literally weren't really, we were living in a house and not really speaking to each other. And so a couple of days later, I said, I need to talk to you. And he said, okay. And I said, I'm going to leave in July. And he said, okay. I don't think he thought I was serious because I had taken care of him all this long. Why would I change? And then like 2 weeks later, he came back and he said, "Can you help me get a car?" And it was like, you don't get it. And then I told Tiffany, I said, "Well, he needs a car. I need to get him a car." It didn't matter that my car is falling apart and
It's
still
like he is a grown man who can move. We are not buying him a car because she needs a car. She is driving around in something that is not consistent and not reliable. If anybody's getting a car, it is you.
So somebody donated a car to an organization that I had a contract with, and they gave it to him. And July 6th, I left because it was raining July 1st, and we didn't want to move in the rain. And we didn't move into an apartment. I had a cousin who had a house, so I'm renting his house. And I love it. And I'm even entertaining thoughts of moving to the country and building a house.
If you do that, I'm coming over.
Come on.
I'm coming over.
Come on. I'm
I
actually
am.
looking at a 100-year-old house right now to maybe move into before we build a house on some other property. And I finished a book.
Isn't it neat to see what happens when you're free? Like, just mentally, she's like, I'm going to be living on I'm actually 100 acres, people. And before I do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to be, because the truth of the matter, I remember the moment when I saw Carmen, and Carmen said her view was always right here. Always right was what was in front of her. And it was all rooted in limitations of what couldn't happen, what wasn't going to happen. And in her mind, like, life was already almost over, and she was just writing the rest of this thing out until God called her home, and she was just going to be like, well, maybe in another life. And I was like, well, forget that. We are not going to do that.
She said the first one. She didn't say.
We are not going to do that. This is not about another life. What about this life that we're in? What about this life? How about we just make it happen in this life? Because you have a couple of decades left, for sure.
But it really is freeing. It's not just freeing the physical space that you're in, but it's freeing the mind space that you're in. So it allows you to see and do and grow and be all of those things that were in the real thing to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I like I said, I've written a book. It was an Amazon
Listen,
bestseller.
do not play with this woman. She wrote a whole book.
In 3 days, it was an Amazon bestseller.
Carmen would be like, hey, guys, I can't deal with you. I have another book signing. Hey, guys, I'd love to be there, but I can't because I have another book signing. Hey there. Hey, guys, I'm so sorry. I can't talk to you right now. The mayor has called me to his office. And
no, she ain't calling.
Listen,
she don't like me.
Here's what's true. Carmen, how many books did you sell?
I don't even know. I've sold 800 out of my house.
800 out of her house.
But Amazon sold out. Barnes & Noble sold out. Target and Walmart sold out.
Yes.
And I am just amazed because I'd never thought about that. I'll tell people in a minute, I didn't intend to write the book. Somebody asked me to write the book because I had spoken. I spoke on a stage that I hadn't intended to speak on. And 30 minutes after I spoke, there was an email in my mailbox asking me to write a book from a publishing company.
Oh, so good.
And now we're talking about a second book. And there are 4 or 5 other books that I actually intended to write, and these were not any of them.
You talking about living your absolute best life, being free, being able to make choices. I listened to this and I thought to myself, I don't know if it even gets better than this. It was like this is exactly what I dreamed of when I said, I'm going to go tap into the world's untapped potential. Carmen wrote a book, sure, but before that, she hadn't even thought of writing a book. If she wasn't in a place of being free, she couldn't have written the book. Then she wrote a book that people actually wanted. Then word got around and she became her own popular celebrity. She's a whole celebrity.
Showing up on news, on postings, news articles,
all in like a year and a half. So Carmen, guess what's so awesome? You've now just told the world the truth.
I have.
Because we are going to take this clip and it is going to go on your social media on a what by when date.
Well, I was going to tell it. I had already put it on my calendar for March 19th, which is a Sunday, a Sunday afternoon at 3:00. So,
So we're going to get this edited
okay,
and it's going to happen.
okay.
This is your what by when.
All right. And so then when my husband, I haven't finished the divorce part yet, but he's been telling other people that I paid some woman to tell me what to do.
I'm going to get a new level of hate mail. What's her name? Tiffany what? I could just see it. I'm ready for it. Money well spent. Give her a round of applause. I love her. I talk about Carmen all the time because she inspired me. I talk about that all the time because I remember the moment. It was a journey for women called More. And I took a handful of women on a very private journey as I acknowledged my own truth about relationships, people, tolerations, me living at a 5-star status in my relationships and people around me versus the 4.4 I had begun to settle for. I had begun to settle for 4.4, and I was like, I know better. I only want 5s in this road. And so I started this private journey for women, and I had never done it before because I had never just taught women before. And the hardest part about acknowledging the truth is that you can't know the truth. So at that moment, once Carmen said, well, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to be married. And I was like, great, well, let's just cut this shit out so we can move on to the next.